Stars twinkling in space, a sweeping majestic arpeggio, a girl holding a basket of flowers, and we're zooming out, and we're zooming out, and we're zooming out. These are the first images of Final Fantasy VII. It's one hell of a way to make a first impression, that's for sure. Now, I dimly recall the hype that surrounded the game's release in November of '97, seeing huge spreads in magazines and thinking just how insane and oh my god crazy it all looked, and that I needed to play this game right now. It didn't even matter that there'd apparently been 6 other Final Fantasy games before this that I'd never even heard of because they never came out in Europe. For all intents and purposes, this was the first Final Fantasy for lots of people. For me also, it was the first time I seriously wanted a PlayStation. I saw the staggering images on the page, how the whole thing looked like this insane movie, and yeah, I kinda knew that the game wasn't going to get ported to the Mega Drive anytime soon, let's put it that way. And so, Christmas 1997, I had a PlayStation bestowed upon me alongside 3 games: International Superstar Soccer Pro, because football, Tomb Raider 2, because, well, Lara seemed like a safe bet at the time, and FF7. This was the introduction to the new generation, and it took my life over like no other game it had or ever has since. And I wasn't alone either. So many others seemed to share this experience too, and just gab about all the things that happened. The impact that FF7 made back then was quite simply gigantic. No other JRPG before or since has managed to reach its level. The game sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Before this moment, RPGs were a little bit more niche, but FF7 thrust them into the spotlight. It also pretty much came out at exactly the right time, a couple of years into the 32-bit generation. Early adopters wanted something that would truly show off their new toy at the height of its power, and those who were finally ready to put the MD, the SNES and that away, people like me, wanted something amazing that would sell the new system to them. So basically, everyone wanted Final Fantasy VII, whether they knew it or not. It redefined the genre as a big part of the mainstream, and pretty much secured the PlayStation status as #1, because RPGs were suddenly a big thing, and guess what? Virtually all of them were on PlayStation. Back then, love for the game was pretty much universal. This sprawling 3-disc behemoth was the new top dog, taking the throne as the greatest game ever made, without question. Nowadays, well, you get a little bit more of a divide. Those who love the games, well, they love them as much as ever, still ready to prostrate themselves in front of the game at any given moment. The people who hate the game, well, they're just as loud. It's overrated, overhyped, the characters are awful, the plot doesn't make any sense, and for fuck's sake, will you just shut the fucking fuck up about FF7 already? And so the wars raged on over, 17 years. But 17 years after its release, it's still one of the most talked about games around. Hell, the generation that grew up with FF7 are all starting to hit their 30s now, and so we're seeing some more decent copy about the game than ever before, whether it's positive or negative. And as for me, as someone who's scarily nearing 30 themselves, hopefully this is a contribution too. FF7 has been a video I've wanted to make since I started, to finally nail down my favourite game of all time. I replay it every couple of years or so, and so I thought when that time comes around again, the video would start. But I can't make just one video now, can I? This is a huge game of 80 hours or more, over 3 discs, and I want to cover just about every bit of it, and there is so freaking much. So naturally, this review is going to be split into parts. 7 parts. I doubt I can pare it down any more than that, to be honest. We'll be looking at all the big scenes, detailing all the characters, going through the mechanics, the music, the style. Who knows, maybe there'll be some extended universe bits to boot, if I can be bothered with that. Because FF7 is quite a special RPG, not just for how famous it is, not just for what I personally think of it, but for how it's virtually like no other. Few big games are as openly personal as this one, while displaying such ambition and scope along with it. If you made this game today, I mean, how much would it cost? Billions? Trillions? Some things about FF7, its technical aspects and particularly some of its character depictions are definitely of their time, but in other areas it almost transcends time. There's concepts and bits of storytelling we struggle and navel gaze with in gaming today that FF7 carries out effortlessly. And yeah, there are some flaws, and some pretty questionable ones to boot. The EU and all of the spin-offs don't seem to have helped things much, almost simplifying the characters in a way. I mean, you might be surprised if you've never really had much experience with the actual game before as to how the characters actually pan out in the original game. So this series is, well, it's going to try and hit everything. It's kind of a big task, but yep, as a great prophet of the age once said, there ain't no getting off of this train we're on. So, let us begin with Midgar. Okay, so we're back to the Flower Girl, the city, and the title. And next thing you know, there's a train. Within seconds, characters are jumping off, attacking guards, and a blonde spiky fellow is under your control going straight into battle on a mission to blow up a reactor, and we don't even know the hell why. This is immediately something that sets FF7 out from the rest. Most RPGs take time to delicately introduce characters, set the scene, you know. It could be hours before anything major actually happens, and people expect that. FF7 does not do this. It starts in media res, with everything already fucked up and you doing shit without even knowing why. The first scene sets a breakneck pace that will pretty much last for the next few hours. Anyway, you are controlling Cloud Strife. He used to be in an elite force called Soldier, and he's actually quite cocky and mercenary-like, believe it or not. The second playable character we meet also flies in pretty sharpish. Barrett Wallace, leader of a group of eco-terrorists called Avalanche, who Cloud is now a part of. And the other characters are Biggs, Wedge and Jesse, the rest of the team. Low on skill but high on enthusiasm, and all ready to blow shit up. The first Reactor one is a pretty great introduction, all told. It throws you in at the deep end with a big slice of industrial terror and gets you quickly up to speed with all the mechanics of the game. Even if you can't access materia yet, you can learn about elemental weaknesses and how these robots in particular get seriously hurt by lightning. Also, the first boss teaches you that it's not always best to just attack willy-nilly. Sometimes, you know, you need to wait. Or at least it tries to do this, but the translation is rather famously kind of botched. And some seeds are set for later on, you know. Cloud and Barrett have a pretty big personality clash going on, and Cloud has the first of many tiny little flashbacks. You know, you can see that there's a bit more to his character than just show off. Still, we'll be talking about characters a lot more in part 2, for now we're just going to plough right into the story. Thanks to Cloud, Avalanche actually succeed in their mission, blowing the reactor sky high. So this isn't just a ragtag group of eco-warriors after all, they're deadly serious. I mean, perhaps compare it to the opening mission of Final Fantasy VI and how badly that goes. It's pretty bold when you think about it. The first thing our group of heroes do is blow up a government-owned reactor, causing untold amounts of damage and presumably killing a lot of people to boot. The news reports afterwards certainly suggest that this was not a bloodless crime. And this kinda sets the tone going forward. Although there are certainly moments of comedic relief, FF7 is a very dark game. Why did we do it? For the greater good? I mean, that's certainly what Barrett says, but you would be forgiven for thinking that might run a little bit hollow. To be fair, at this present time there doesn't appear to be a better way, but we shall see as we go along. Cloud explores for a bit, gets chased by some guards, pulls a bit of a stunt to get back on the train, a la Cloud style as we know him at this moment, with the rest of Avalanche, where we learn most of the previous minute's exposition thanks to Barrett's pontification and Jesse's eagerness to show us the train map. So Avalanche are camped out in Sector 7 at a bar that just so happens to be owned by Tifa Lockhart, Cloud's childhood friend. Marlene is also here, Barrett's daughter and basically the sole reason for his existence. Again, we've joined the story in progress, but we can gather that Tifa introduced Cloud into the fold. But why is he here and not in Soldier? Who knows? As usual, his brashness and realism clash with Barrett's relentless idealistic nature, no surprises there. As for the rest of Avalanche, they're usually better staying the hell out of it, as Biggs will demonstrate. We do get an actual nice flashback to Cloud and Tifa's hometown of Nibelheim, where Cloud declares his intention to join Soldier, and Tifa makes him promise that he'll save her if need be, one glorious day. It's all very nice, you know, with the slow pan up to the sky, and even a little shooting star. It's a perfect memory. Almost too perfect, in fact. Soon enough though, it's time to go back to work and blow up another reactor, with the added bonus that Tifa's going along this time. Yep, she's the third playable character. The rest of Sector 7 acts as a ground to introduce all the other RPG elements, do a bit of shopping, loot people's houses, find out what everything is. Actually, I think it's quite a cute touch in this game that in the beginner's hall, the person who's giving you a tutorial, thankfully only if you want it, is Cloud himself. It's a little nod to consistency and his status. As a fighter, he's clearly far more capable than anyone in his group, and he don't need to be taught anything. And as a couple finally agree on something and commit suicide to celebrate, just to hammer home how utterly shit and hopeless everything is, we get on the train. And get off it pretty sharpish because our IDs get all buggered up and we have to jump off. Avalanche's budget, alas, doesn't quite stretch to a convincing set of fake IDs. Barrett's usual hot-headed nature doesn't help much either, but in the end, the mission's still on. Now, the second reactor is much the same as the first, with only a few subtle changes. It might be at first disappointing to see that it's all the same aside from a bluish tint, but it makes sense. This is, after all, a company concerned with mass production and the consumption of Mako. There's no personality here. One can imagine the sectors in the upper plates of Midgar, the bits we don't really see, being utterly identikit to boot. Only the slums have a bit more personality, as awful as they are. The bomb gets planted, Cloud has another more detailed flashback, first time we hear the name Sephiroth mentioned, and then after cracking the easiest security system in the world, we get jumped on and meet our first proper antagonist. President Shinra's even got his own theme and everything. As the name suggests, he's the head honcho at Shinra, and is a classic fat cigar-chomping boss concerned with nothing but money and power. I mean, geez, he even leaves via helicopter because he has an important dinner to attend. He leaves you with the first proper boss of the game, Airbuster, as well as the awesome boss theme. You know, you gotta have something for these moments, and it makes it a bit special even if Airbuster is the single easiest fight in the game so far, including those guards from the beginning. Like, you know, he's sandwiched in and everything, it finishes in about 2 shots. Despite how easy it is, Cloud does manage to get caught in his explosion. Tifa gets upset, Barrett is philosophical I guess, and Cloud tries to be strong. But alas, he loses his grip and falls a couple of 100 feet to his death. The end. No, seriously. As he lays somewhere dying, we get to see the voices he's got in his head, trying to get him back, trying. And okay, obviously Cloud's not dead. One thing you'll learn about this game is that gravity doesn't matter all that much. It only hurts if you roll it up into a ball. So a church roof and the world's strongest flower bed managed to break Cloud's fall. Wait a minute. Flowers? Huh. Yes, by one hell of a coincidence, we've just so happened to fall right next to that flower girl we've seen a couple of times previously. Cloud brushes himself off and makes some small talk for a little while. Turns out the flower girl's name is Aeris, and she's normal, pretty much. No connection with any terrorism thing, no childhood friendship, no crazy flashbacks. Just a normal girl who sells flowers, likes Sonata, and has a rather dirty sense of humour. Well, at least until some guy in a suit and some Shinra goons turn up to capture her and call her an ancient. So yeah, you know, we're still behind the 8 ball as far as plot goes. Reno, the aforementioned suit guy, is part of the Turks, Shinra's spies basically, and for now Aeris is going to be doing a little bit of damseling, needing Cloud's aid as she tries to escape. Seems pretty typical, but things will change dramatically later on. She's kinda useless in combat for the moment, so the best thing for Cloud to do is to use some barrels to Donkey Kong the fuck out of these goons. We prevail in the end with Cloud switching roles. He was a mercenary terrorist, now he's a girl's bodyguard. Gaia has a habit of kicking you further down the ladder, you know? Hanging out with Aeris does introduce a few more things. A chance to do a little bit more shopping, probably the funniest mistranslation in the whole game, and a beautiful house, seemingly the only place where anything grows in the slums. Now this whole scene might make absolutely no sense at all when you look at the rest of Midgar, but it's beautiful anyway. It's artistic license. Roll with it. It makes a change from all the dystopianness and cyberpunkness anyways. Even the house itself is quite nice, so much different from the pits we've been hanging out in. But we've done our job, we've taken Aeris home. Her mother does seem kind of protective though, and asks us to leave quietly in the middle of the night. Something about not wanting her to get hurt again. In any case, we do that, thus ending Aeris' involvement in the story. Well, until she suddenly pops up at the exit to Sector 6. And Cloud's a very typically man about the whole thing, not wanting to take a girl along, saying she shouldn't be accompanying her and blah 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 blah. Aeris thankfully has none of it. She wants to come along and let's that. Bit of washing around later, including some rather cool new monsters like the Hell House, and we take a break at a nice little abandoned playground, where we just so happen to catch Tifa taking a chocobo ride. Well, finally we're back on the trail at least. And so we come to the best looking part of the whole Midgar section, and one of the more memorable parts of the game in general, the Wall Market. I mean, first off, just look at it. An absolute classic pre-rendered creation, so much atmosphere. The best bits of FF7 are like walking around in a freaking painting, and this is one of them. The whole thing here might be a bit of a fetch quest, but it's still quite a laugh, as well as being quite bold to boot. The long and short of it is that Tifa, for whatever reason, has gone to see a guy called Don Corneo, boss of the Wall Market. The Don only accepts women into his mansion, and Cloud doesn't feel like busting on in and killing people. For the moment anyway. So seems like we're kinda stuck. Until Aeris comes up with this fiendish, cunning plan. She thinks Cloud should drag up in order to get into the mansion. Yes. For someone like Cloud, the plan's almost contemptible. But hey, it's also the only option, and so he reluctantly agrees. And what follows is a collection of rather crazy scenes as we go fetch items. An alcoholic dress owner gets motivated by the job at hand, even if he's surprised that a guy like him would ever want to dress up. Still, a dress itself isn't quite going to cut it, so we need something more. And this is where some of FF7's more stereotypical bits of humour come out. First off, we go to a gym where we win a wig in a squatting contest. The head honcho at the gym is a cross-dresser, and everyone else is very big and muscular. Now this is quite a Japanese stereotype as it goes. It's the Japanese stereotype of gay people. They're not, androgynous or anything. They're all massive, muscular, bear types. So, it's nothing to do with kink or anything. It's just the way it goes, stereotypically speaking, of course. There'll be an even bigger example a bit further on. Anyway, we do other odd things like get medicine for someone who's got the shits, and find out what's in a vending machine for some shop owner. But the fun really starts at the Honeybee Inn, a place that I could honestly do a whole freaking video on. The Honeybee Inn is hilarious, especially for how it treats Cloud, as precisely the sort of sad sack that goes into this sort of place. The whole surfing just never gets old, nor does the conversation you get when you try and engage the Honeybee's girls in conversation. Again, it does play on some more Japanese fears, particularly the line about hoping that Cloud doesn't follow anyone home, sexual harassment being something of a problem in the country, especially in public, girls groped on trains and what have you. But it's quite funny to see our protagonist get treated in this way. I mean, he is utterly insulted for everything he does in this place. Poor sod. Don't they know that he's just a nice guy? Wouldn't Milady deserve better than a place like this? Ah. Anyway, there's other fun stuff like spying on what appears to be President Shinra cosplaying as a knight, an elderly couple trying to get in the mood while some Finn is watching. But the main thing to do is pick either the fuck room, as I call it, or the group room, so you can get another item. The fuck room is actually pretty damn creepy, with Cloud getting his worst flashback yet, before getting woken up by Mookie, the most stereotypical muscular gay guy of them all. It don't make all that much sense, and even Cloud has to hold his hands up here. Quite funny. And the group room? Well, in the most awesome display of contempt yet, Cloud inadvertently finds himself in a room with Mookie and a platoon of muscular gay guys. They bathe together, and it's awesome. Unless you're Cloud, in which case it hurts. Needless to say, I don't think I really got this scene the first time I played through the game. The stereotype and the demented look on all the guys' faces is kind of odd, and I do wish there was the option for Cloud to say that he enjoyed it, but the scene itself is funny, and it's amazing it's even here. 'Tis good to be out in the open. Anyway, we're fully dressed and ready to enter the inn, much to Tifa's surprise. If we've done everything right, not only do we get in, but Don ends up choosing Cloud as his company for the night. I think he might be related to General Melchett. Obviously, the passion doesn't last all that long, and our main purpose here, as it turns out, was to get information from the Don about Shinra's activities. And, well, this is kind of where the fun stops. Don Corneo says that Shinra are planning to release the catch on the plate above Sector 7. No, seriously, this is the first page on how to deal with a terrorist organisation, destroy the entire city that they're in. Hundreds of thousands of people will die if Shinra can't be stopped. But the Don bumps us into the sewers anyway, because he's a bit of a cunt like that. We get another boss battle, and a fight through the sewers, and Sector 7's train graveyard. Now this is probably the first place in the game where it's recommended to do at least a little bit of grinding, although you never have to do all that much. We reach our destination and the pillar's still up, but there's tons of fighting on the pillar itself. Wedge falls from the top of the pillar to his death as Aeris rushes off to grab Marlene at 7th Heaven. Biggs and Jesse are mortally wounded too, with Barrett still fighting at the top. We get to fight Reno for the first time, but ultimately our efforts are in vain. The bomb cannot be disarmed. More than that, another Turk, Sen, appears with Aeris in tow, having captured her. There's nothing left to do except grab a cable and ride it the hell out of Sector 7, just as the bomb goes off and the pillar comes crashing down, killing everyone. Avalanche didn't save the day, and hundreds of thousands died. The whole of Sector 7 has been wiped from the Earth. As confused as Avalanche's motivations might have been, this is kind of a bit much really. And now, well, there's no more Avalanche. It's quite a powerful moment in the game, to be honest, and the first of many. To this point, we've been blowing up reactors largely without meeting any consequences for failure. And here, we find one, and it's more severe than anyone could have possibly imagined. Shinra's seemingly won. Barrett is utterly inconsolable. Everything he worked for is lost. The sudden death of Biggs, Wedge and Jesse is a bit of a hammer too. I mean, they were only small characters, but they were still kind of well drawn. It even seemed like the game was going to put Cloud and Jesse together at one point. But then, they're all dead. Worse still, Barrett thinks he's lost Marlene too. But Aeris did say something when she was on the chopper. She's alright? She's alright! Oh, well, this at least gives Barrett a bit of hope. And with that, we go back to Aeris's house. There we find out a bit more about Aeris through Elmira, who it turns out is not Aeris's real mother. She found Aeris at the dying body of her true mother, Ifalna, as she was waiting for her husband to come back from the war. There's something about this scene. The tint comes after a shocking moment. The brief cameo for Biggs and Jesse in the beginning. It's quite affecting, to be honest. Actually, it's probably just that music, but the sense of loss, the things that aren't said, little gestures with animation that would probably look static if they were more detailed, but actually convey something here. It's a tragic scene. In any case, Elmira takes Aeris in. Certain things happen, like Aeris telling Elmira that her husband's returned to the planet days before she receives confirmation of his death, and then Shinra come along, wishing for Aeris to be returned to them, for she's a very special piece of property. And so that's the story, really. Aeris isn't just a normal girl, she's an ancient. The last surviving ancient, in fact. In a lot of the spin-offs for FF7, this is usually where character development for Aeris ends. But thankfully, not here. It's also a developing moment for Barrett too, for Aeris did indeed rescue Marlene. He has a reason to fight again, but he also has someone he can be thankful for. He's noticeably quite a bit humbler for the time being. And so off we go to fight. Tifa randomly suggests another trip to Wall Market, where we happen upon a wire that appeared to get exposed after Sector 7 went down. But it's more than just a wire. What is it, Barrett? A golden shiny wire of hope. That's right. And it's our only way to get to the upper plate. One of the more annoying parts of the game follows, you know, trying to time that bloody jump. Although oddly I got it in 2 tries, so no biggie. It's quite a cool moment, especially when you see the wreckage of Sector 7 in the background. It makes you think about revenge. And finally, you know, we're there. Shinra HQ itself. It should be noted that everything so far comes in, what, about 4.5 hours of play? Seriously, so much happens in all that time. I haven't stopped having to explain things. And then you hit a massive building, far out of proportion with anything else in Midgar. Shinra HQ could easily have been the rest of the game. For all intents and purposes, it's a final dungeon. Shinra are our main antagonists, and this is their HQ. The big question then is, well, how do we get in? Well, there's two ways. We could pull a bit of a Metal Gear Solid and take the stairs up to the higher floors. Every single one of them. It's quite boring, and in the end it's utterly not worth it, you'll be shocked to know. Although there is some funny dialogue on the way. Still, the sensible approach, it turns out, is to just bust the hell right on in. After all, we are the big superhero force, are we not? It's a bit more in character. Q scaring the locals and whacking people loads, winning battles in elevators and the like. And then, at last, floor 60. And so, the final battle begins. Or not. Shinra HQ, as it goes, is a bit of a puzzle dungeon. Just about every floor has its own gimmick, and you need to find a keycard to get on the upper ones. The puzzles themselves are pretty straightforward for now, getting past guards, figuring out a password, opening up doors, and you do get a fair few goodies to boot, although, to be honest, it's probably not my favourite part of Midgar, at least not until the end. The music and setting does give off a nice corporate vibe though, that again is not something we're used to seeing at this point. And we also get a chance to listen in on a meeting, where President Shinra details his glorious plan to use Aeris in order to locate the Promised Land, where all of Planet's Mako congregates basically, and where Neo Midgar will be built, Shinra's crowning glory. And something that will probably drain the planet's energy for good. I mean, God, isn't he just evil? I can't wait to get my hands on him, can you? We're also introduced to Hojo, head of Shinra's science division and currently keeper of Aeris. So, you know, let's follow him. So we end up on his floors where we find... Oh my God, what the fuck is that? Ah! Whatever it is, it seems to set off something pretty awful in Cloud. Some headless thing called Genova. Ugh. Anyway, what Hojo's gonna do is he's gonna do his thing and crossbreed Aeris with some dog. Barrett solves this problem in the only way he knows how. Thankfully, the doors open and said dog decides to attack Hojo. He's so good that he'll even help us in the upcoming battle. So yeah, this is Wed 13, our 5th playable character, and the first one who's basically a supporting character and not directly involved in the main plot. Still, he's in our debt, so he'll happily sign up for us. He talks too, and he's smart. After dealing with one of Hojo's many eldritch abominations, we go to escape and, of course, get captured. How utterly rude. The Prez gives another evil speech about controlling the planet and what have you, and basically we end up in the slammer. Once again, everything looks bleak. Aeris is still captured, and the rest of us will probably end up getting executed on television or something. May as well go to sleep. Wait a minute, the door's open. We can leave. Maybe the prison guard decided to rebel. That must be what happened, huh? Let's go and thank him now. Oh, wait, he's dead. In fact, aside from our party, everyone's dead. Blood lines the floor. The walls have been cut apart. That creepy headless thing in Hojo's lab named Geneva? Missing. This whole part has a real what the fuck's going on sort of vibe. Just suddenly something's happened that's completely out of control. And so what can we do? Well, we head back to floor 69, the President's office. And there, we find President Shinra, slumped over his desk with a massive sword sticking out of his belly. The guy who was all set up to be our main antagonist? Well, he's fucking dead. And no one has any real idea who did it. Oh, except one person, that being Cloud himself. Now up to this point in the game, we've only heard the name Sephiroth in passing. The press called him a brilliant soldier. He appears often in Cloud's flashbacks. He seems to be some sort of great warrior who, for whatever reason, isn't around anymore. But now Cloud knows that he's here. The sword is his, unmistakably. And unlike anyone else, Cloud is not about to celebrate Lepreza's passing. He knows that whatever reason Sephiroth has for making his return, it sure as hell isn't good. In his words, this is the real crisis for the planet. Still, Lepreza's son comes along to take his place, Rufus. And unsurprisingly, he turns out to be an even bigger bastard than his father, shouting about ruling the world through fear and what have you. Cloud fights him while the others escape, getting their own fight in the process. In one of the more kick-ass moments of CGI in the game, the rest of the crew get in a truck while Cloud rides a bike down the stairs. It's time to get the fuck out of Dodge, because this whole thing's so much bigger than Midgar. We'll talk more about the bike minigame when we get to cover minigames in more detail, but it's a pretty cool change-up. But finally though, after just one more boss, we're out of trouble. But well, what now? As mentioned, this is bigger than Midgar or Shinra. There's a whole new threat to the planet, and his name is Sephiroth. Cloud has to find him, he wants some answers, and if necessary, well, he wants to stop him. And the rest of the group are more than happy to ride along with him. After all, what else are they going to do? We have the leader of the biggest group of terrorists in the world, a childhood friend who used to run a bar in the slums, a girl who so happens to be the last surviving ancient, a canine research specimen who also talks, and a former member of Soldier who gets crazy flashbacks and hears voices in his head. Well, looks like we're all set then. This is the moment where the game opens up. Midgar was so huge in scope it seems like it could be the whole game itself. Indeed, it's basically a microcosm of the whole game that functions as an introduction. It's quite a breathtaking moment when you realise that that was all just one city and there's a whole world of things to actually explore. Meaning of course that there's still a whole lot of adventuring to go. This first video pretty much just had to go through Midgar in full because it's so important, so much happens here, and nothing whatsoever would make sense if I didn't go through the lot. Keep in mind that all this happened in about 6 hours, a crazy amount of plot for a JRPG, and such a breakneck speed. And yeah, there's going to be more exposition to come very shortly. For now though, the group heads off to a nearby village called Calm. And yeah, the names of places in FF7 really aren't all that subtle. And yes, that's where we end the video. Before we continue with the plot, we probably need to take some time to examine some things in a little bit more detail. So the second part is going to take a closer look at the characters. We'll have a look at Cloud, Barrett, Tifa and Aeris, what they've done so far, their motivations, all that good stuff. We'll also pore over some of the gameplay mechanics in a bit more detail. How's the battle system so far? And what's with all the pre-rendered backgrounds and blocky characters? Plus, we'll take a look at a couple of the themes introduced by the game so far, do a little bit of a post-mortem on Shinra, and we'll sum up just what I think about the whole Midgar section. So yeah, still a long way to go, in other words. But it's a journey that's well worth the taking. For now though, it's time to end the video. Thanks for watching, and wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.